everybody, and welcome back to the Responsible AI Report. I'm very excited. We have Megha Sinha joining us today. Megha, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm equally excited to be hosting this alongside you.
It's great to have you here. You, of course, work for Genpact, who recently became a member of the Responsible AI Institute. And so it's really been a great opportunity for me to learn more about Genpact as an organization, to learn more about you and your work and your expertise in the space as well. And being able to feature you on this show to really kind of dive into some of the news and trends that are happening in the space. You particularly are someone who has a lot of experience and expertise in responsible AI governance and frameworks. And there's an article that I came upon from PR Newswire that came out with an article about Domino Data Labs survey that revealed a significant gap between AI ambitions and resources for responsible AI governance in enterprises. So while 97% of organizations have set responsible AI goals, according to this survey, 48% lack the resources to implement necessary governance frameworks. And this survey, of course, highlights the critical nature of AI governance, which I know you could really speak to. Organizations are prioritizing the definition of responsible AI principles and deployment of governance platforms to address challenges, but resource constraints continue to remain a major obstacle. So I really want to use this article as a jumping off point to hear a little from your expertise, and maybe start with the question, what are some essential components of a responsible AI framework, and how can organizations effectively integrate that into their AI development lifecycle?
Very well founded question, Patrick. See, building and integrating a responsible AI framework into the AI development lifecycle requires a very structured approach. And I would break this down into an 8 steps approach, where you begin with defining your ethical guidelines, which are more like your responsible AI pillars for the organization, and that form the backbone of a responsible AI framework. These guidelines could outline the core principles, which are fairness, accountability, transparency, privacy, security. Now, one needs to start by establishing a code of conduct or set of principles that are suited and relevant for the organization's AI development goals, which includes adopting international ethical standards. So, let's say, for example, the OECD AI principles, but align them to sector specific regulations. If we are solving a problem for the healthcare domain versus we are solving a problem for financial institutions, the scheme of things changes drastically. And therefore, these guidelines should be customized and embedded into every stage of the AI lifecycle, from data development, collection to model deployment, and having a governance structure ensuring adherence to these principles. Second up comes setting up a cross functional team. And it is a no brainer today that AI development is not just a technical exercise. It requires diverse inputs from different parts of the organization to ensure responsible outcomes. And therefore, forming an AI ethics committee or a working group that includes representatives from legal, from information security, from data science and operations teams is critical. This group should meet regularly to review and assess AI models. It must ensure that ethical concerns are considered at each phase of development, and also oversee the decision making process around the use of, let's say, sensitive data or high risk applications, and ensure that all voices are heard and potential risks are evaluated. Third up, I would say incorporation of bias mitigation techniques early, so during the AI development cycle itself and not after the solution has been developed and deployed. It must start at the data collection stage. So you ensure that there is diversity in the data, you're avoiding biased data sets. Use techniques such as resampling of underrepresented groups, balancing class distributions, and deploy algorithmic fairness techniques such as maybe adversarial debiasing or regularization methods. Fourth, embed explainability and traceability into AI models, because AI systems, especially complex deep learning models, can often be seen as black boxes. And as AI practitioners, it's imperative that we understand how to build trust and ensure that AI is accountable. So provide insights into how models generate predictions, use methods like Lime, Shapley to understand the factors that are influencing the model's decision, and build transparency by actually explaining to the end user how data was collected, how the model was trained, and how predictions were made. Additionally, create explainability reports that can be shared with stakeholders, including end users. Fifth up, establish robust accountability mechanisms because responsible AI requires clear ownership and accounting throughout the life cycle. So one must designate specific roles responsible for the different stages. For example, you have a data privacy officer that could ensure that data usage itself complies with regulatory standards, and then an AI ethics officer that could oversee ethical considerations. Sixth, I would say implementation of continuous monitoring and risk management. AI systems, once deployed, need to be monitored for fairness. They need to be monitored for accuracy, robustness, and compliance. So, responsible AI frameworks are not static and they require ongoing oversight. One needs to set up continuous monitoring mechanisms to track the key performance indicators, use AI auditing tools, implement periodic risk assessments, and importantly, integrate incident management protocols that can allow for rapid response to potential ethical breaches. Seventh, more important, align with global regulatory and legal standards. Now, in the wake of coming regulations around, let's say, the EU AI Act or more nuanced GDPR that mandates data privacy, it's important that we work with legal experts and technical teams together to implement compliance measures and make sure that models do not rely on personal data unnecessarily. And eighth, last, most important, foster a culture of responsible AI such that this initiative depends in a manner not only to top management but also everyone involved in AI development, from engineers to executives, and share responsibility for ethical AI. So, fostering this culture is important. Provide regular trainings on ethical AI practices, not just for data scientists and developers, but for all employees. Encourage open discussions on ethical dilemmas that anybody in the development lifecycle could be facing, and involve external stakeholders that could be your customers, could be regulators, and even civil society organizations to continuously improve your AI governance model. So I would say if we are following this 8 step approach that is holistic and comprehensive, we can ultimately ensure that our AI systems are not only high performing, but also responsible, transparent, and fair.
Yeah, that is such a thorough explanation, but also very clear as to the work that needs to be put in to ensure that we're developing and implementing AI responsibly
Yeah.
throughout all these different steps, these 8 steps or guidelines rather of what you were discussing. I really heard transparency in a variety of different forms is utmost importance, and that trust at the end of the day is going to be the foundation for the work that we're doing, and as we're rolling out AI, whether it's within our organizations or with the customers that may be using our AI. I'm curious, just obviously you've walked us through this very integral governance structure. I'm curious if you could speak to that a bit. How do governance structures play a role in ensuring the accountability of AI systems, as especially as you were saying, as global regulations around AI development become more stringent?
Right. So, see, governance structures are critical as we talked in enforcing accountability, especially because global AI regulations continue to evolve and tighten. And establishing this requires a coordinated approach that can balance oversight, compliance, and operational effectiveness. We need to begin by establishing a clear, formal AI governance framework that outlines the roles, the rules, and responsibilities involved in the AI development and deployment, and something that can provide an overarching structure to ensure that these systems are developed responsibility. For example, one could appoint a chief AI governance officer or establish an AI governance board that oversees all AI projects that are being undertaken in the organization. What type of AI applications are governed? What are the reporting lines? How accountability is tracked at each stage of the development? Moreover, you integrate this AI governance with corporate risk management because it has to be tightly integrated in the broader risk management framework to ensure that AI risks, such as ethical, operational, and regulatory risks, are adequately addressed. And this could include conducting AI specific risk assessments, categorizing AI projects based on their risk profile, so low risk versus high risk, and setting up an AI risk committee that works alongside the organization's enterprise risk management. High risk systems, such as those that are used in healthcare or financial services, should undergo more stringent oversight. These need to be set up with accountability mechanisms at every individual step of the level. You need to implement or break down the AI accountability into three core layers as I look at it. One is your data accountability, where you need to assign specific teams to be responsible for data governance, because ensuring data is clean, it is representative, it's collected ethically, it is abiding by the fair data collection principles is important. Second up is model accountability, where you appoint designated teams or individuals for model performance, fairness, and explainability. And by the way, these are those people that have hands on experience in building models because they understand what goes inside building a model. Third is deployment accountability, wherein I would say that the role of ML ops engineers who are basically putting these machine learning and AI models into production, or more recently now, the LLM ops or FM ops engineers is very critical. So, to formalize accountability, organizations have to introduce an AI accountability metrics that can clearly map out these roles, responsible parties, and the decision making processes. I would say also going further, one has to implement AI audit and compliance controls, which must sit with, let's say, the legal of the organization, the legal team of the organization. One needs to define escalation and remediation processes. So, what happens in the event of an ethical breach, or what happens in the event of non-compliance issues? To build trust in the system and to gain trust from our clients, it is very important that you have a well-defined, they know what to do when something fails or breaks. A remediation framework should be designed so that you can guide actions such as, let's say, you might need to retrain the model, you might need to remove bias data, or disable the AI system temporarily if critical systems or critical failures occur. Then ensure regulatory alignment and global compliance. We talked about the GDPR, we talked about the EU AI Act, and we are seeing regulations coming in every day from different parts of the globe, from different geographies. So it's important that legal teams continuously actively involve in monitoring the changes in AI legislation, advising on compliance strategies, and working closely with the technical teams to tell them the nuances of building systems for a specific geography. And finally, promote transparency and communication in the governance structure. This is to ensure that AI related decisions and risks are communicated clearly and promptly. See, we talked about transparency, where we are giving the power of information in the hands of the end users. So it's important that these governance structures have regular reporting lines for AI performance, risk, and ethical considerations, and promote transparency with customers by providing all of these explanations. I think if we are able to integrate many of these systems within the governance mechanisms, organizations can ensure that their AI systems are accountable and we stay ahead of the regulatory changes. We build trust and we reduce the risk of reputational harm that could come to an organization.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see how much legwork has been done with regards to AI governance. And obviously, looking back on data, as you were saying before, privacy, that kind of helps lay a framework of sorts for how we're going about AI. But there are so many working components to this, and it's incredible to just see the work that's been done, especially as AI regulation in many ways is still very up in the air and we're all still trying to figure it out. I would love to hear your thoughts on why it is critical to incorporate responsible AI thinking into the design and technical implementation of AI systems from the ground up, because that's really where all of this begins is, okay, how do we create responsible AI at the beginning so then hopefully it can make things easier in the long run? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely, Patrick. And I think responsible AI is a subject that is keeping data scientists and AI engineers up all night, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are building the system and need to be very, very cautious. And therefore, the responsible AI thinking is required from the earliest stages of design, where we are on the design board with the clients, with the customers, or with the end users to build a solution, right? One needs to prevent ethical and legal violations from the start, which is why it's critical to have these embedded from the very beginning of your stages of the development lifecycle. Now, when you're designing AI systems, incorporating privacy preserving techniques, let's say such as differential privacy or encryption into the data collection and processing pipelines becomes important. From the very outside, you align your data usage policies with regulations like GDPR or, let's say, even the California Consumer Privacy Act. Now, designing these systems with built in checks for fairness and bias mitigation at every stage of the development lifecycle is critical, whether you are at your data collection stage or you are exploring the data for further putting them into models. These will prevent costly rework or regulatory penalties later. We need to ensure that fairness and biasness are reduced early in the model development because, as I said earlier, if we catch on to these errors later in the development life cycle, the costs go up significantly. So start by using bias aware data collection techniques, use fairness aware machine learning techniques such as adversarial debiasing to ensure that AI models do not perpetuate existing biases, and incorporate fairness metrics like demographic parity or equal opportunity to test whether the model is treating all demographic groups equitably. Designing for explainability from the ground up ensures that AI systems are transparent and accountable, like I mentioned earlier, but how does one actually do it? You should build documentation processes into the pipeline, ensuring that every decision that is taken is documented and traceable, not only for the sake of ensuring responsible AI, but also having a ready to hand out document for maybe the teams, the committees that are going to be monitoring these or going to be auditing these. Enhance long term robustness and sustainability. The inclusion of responsible AI from the very beginning definitely enhances long term robustness and sustainability of the systems that you're building because you're better equipped to handle future regulatory changes, ethical scrutiny, and societal shifts. For example, you implement modular architectures where different components such as bias mitigation or privacy controls can be updated or replaced as regulations keep on evolving, and you do not have a very tightly knit, tightly coupled architecture which is very resistant to change. Fifth, I think reduce reputational and financial risk. This helps us reduce reputational and financial risk. So you conduct thorough ethical assessments during the design phase to identify potential risks. You can implement ethical red teaming sessions where teams challenge the system's fairness. And it's only when you're doing these up in the design phase would you know where to take actions and when to take actions. It will help us to foster public trust and customer confidence, like I mentioned earlier. And it will help us that we align completely with legal teams, with compliance teams, and there are no surprises once the models are deployed and are actually running in production. So you reduce the surprises, you make life easier for everybody involved in the development process, and you make life easier also for your legal and compliance teams.
Yeah, it's really doing the work up front so that on the back end of it, everything's working and operating as it should within that responsible AI framework. Megha, I've learned so much from you from this short conversation today. I feel like I could keep talking to you, but we're going to wrap up today. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join us on the show, and not only for taking the time to join us, but also in the work that you do as well. I could really see your passion for this work come out as you're talking about it. And it is so essential that we have leaders like yourself who are educating us on responsible AI governance, especially as AI innovation and regulation continues to progress and advance. So thanks so much for joining us on the Responsible AI Report. Before we part ways, I'm wondering if you could just share with our listeners where they could find out more information about you as well as Genpact.
Absolutely, Patrick. Genpact is a professional services firm. You could look up us on the internet. We are at www.genpact.com. I am reachable on LinkedIn. So if you search Megha Sinha Genpact, you would find me on the LinkedIn pages.
Great. Well, I'll make sure to include those links in our show description. So viewers out there, all you have to do is scroll down, click those various links provided. Highly recommend checking out Megha as well as her work at Genpact. Megha, thank you so much again for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Patrick.